and welcome once again to EWTN's Bookmark. I'm Doug Keck, your host. A special book, Heart of a Lion. The authors Derek and Annette George, Tate Publishing. Welcome, Derek. Great to have you here.
Thank you.
Annette, great to have you here. This is your first book.
Yes.
And some people might have heard you. I know you were on Jim and Joy's radio show a while back. Have you done some other Catholic media at all, or?
No,
is this really the first opportunity? It's the first time you've been here at EWTN, right?
Exactly.
And we're very excited.
Okay, and your first-time authors, and right on the top, there's a famous author, James Patterson, who says, John Paul rocks, and so does this book, Heart of a Lion, the second edition. Now, most people hearing that here at EWTN would think this must be a book about the soon-to-be sainted Pope John Paul II. But it's not. It's about a different John Paul, right?
Right, exactly.
Correct.
Who is this?
This is our son, John Paul. This is our son, who actually was named after Pope John Paul.
And why did you name him after Pope John Paul?
I'll let Derek.
Derek?
Well, you know, John Paul was in the hospital at that time, and my dad, who is a very devout Catholic, said, you know, this is such an inspirational seeing this kid, and you know, you should name him after a person that we will inspire him. I said, who, Dad? And he said, John Paul. And I said, you know what? That's amazing, because that's the way I'm going to do it, and just did it. It was just no questions asked. John Paul.
Now, John Paul, one thing I wanted to mention is that clearly you're from the South.
Absolutely.
You don't sound like you're from the South, but you really are from the South, right?
I am
you're
from the South.
South African.
South African, yes.
Okay, so we can talk a little bit about later how you two came together.
Right.
Sure.
But what is actually, so before we get into it and kind of talk about the whole situation, what is actually the underlying illness or condition that John Paul was born with that brought about this situation and ultimately this book?
Well, John Paul was born with a rare heart condition called hypoplastic left heart, and it was found in the womb 6 to 8 weeks, you know, and with a scope, and they told us that he wouldn't live past birth, and that if we do not, we could have him aborted.
Right.
Which would be the
I know
right.
that question came up, and I know you said right away that wasn't an option for you. Right.
And you know what? And so we were like shocked. We were young kids, and you know, we had no inspiration. We didn't know what to do. So, what's going on here? You know, we come from two different areas, and you know what? We weren't used to stuff like this. So
right. You kind of talk about the book that you just assume that you go into as a parent. You just assume everything's going to be fine, everything's going to be perfect, and there shouldn't be any problems, and all of a sudden you get hit in the face with this, right?
With this, yes, and it's like, wow.
It was a total nightmare. I mean, because, you know, we're going to have our ultrasound, the first one actually, and it was actually on my birthday, and, you know, we noticed the technician just kind of slowly and stopping. She was chatty and all, and then she just kind of went silent. And Derek even said to her, is something wrong? And she said, no, we'll get the results to your doctor. And then so that's kind of how it all started. And, you know, just to have the diagnosis of hypoplastic left heart was unbelievable, because the doctors told us, you know, basically there's no hope. Right. Your best possibility is probably just to end this right now. You know, and Derek and I looked at each other and said, no way. I mean, you know, if the only 9 months our child has to live is the 9 months in our womb, you know, in the womb, then we're going to do that.
Right. Now, Derek, you were raised as a Catholic, right?
Very,
okay.
very
now, you're a convert then?
I am a convert.
You were raised, but
Southern Baptist.
Was your father a minister?
He was a Southern Baptist minister for over 40 years. Yep. He sure was.
So were you yourself always pro-life and always felt that way in such a way so that when that came up, it wasn't a question in your mind, or is that something you grew to believe? Or
you know, I have to be really honest, because growing up I really never thought of it. You know, I think maybe, you know, in my religion it wasn't brought out that much. I mean, we were very faithful and everything, but then once I met Derek and, you know, we became a family and we had friends that were pro-life, then there was no other alternative, you know, but I had never really thought about it until, you know, Derek and I met and had friends.
Right.
So we're talking about, as far as the book, this 1994, the summer of '94, is that the time frame?
Exactly.
Correct.
Okay.
And one thing I must say, that, you know, that we didn't know what hypoplastic left heart was.
Right.
And then the doctor says to us, let me explain to you, his left side of his heart is dead. He's living on the right side of his heart. Right. And I looked at him and I said, are you kidding me?
Right.
He said, no.
Right. That's the kind of thing I know. I have a child who has autism, and you know, the doctor says to you, well, I think he's autistic, and you go, oh, okay,
Yeah.
so what do you like take for that? You
Yeah,
know, and they go,
exactly.
no, you don't quite understand. And
Yeah.
these days, at least, you have the internet many times. It might have been a little early for you then.
Yeah.
Today, you get the thing, and right away you go to the internet
Exactly.
to Google and find out what are they talking about, right?
Exactly,
And what does
yeah.
this mean? Right,
Correct.
right.
Wow.
So when it first hit you that it was going to be different, how important was your faith to both of you in getting through it initially and then ultimately?
Well, you know, Doug, Annette was such an inspiration to me because, you know, her becoming Catholic in the first place, which is, I feel, a little bit more devout than I am, and which is actually amazing. And she said, Derek, we have to pray. We've got to start right now, and we need to pray and do what's right for this kid. Let's give him a chance. And she said, you know what? And I'll never forget this. She said, the colors of the rainbow, I can see clearly now. There's a song by Jimmy Cliff,
Right, sure.
The Rain Is Gone.
Yeah,
and
right,
she,
sure.
And she says,
That's
there's
so
the inspiration. I said, and I looked at her and I said, you know what? I'm so happy that I have you part of my life here, that, you know, that we can.
Yeah.
Considered that one of the early reggae songs, actually.
Yeah,
exactly.
Popular, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
right,
and
right.
Exactly,
So-
and I just, you know, I think our faith, coming from a faith-based background for both of us, you know, that had instilled in us, and that's what we relied on. What else were we going to rely on? We couldn't rely on doctors that were telling us there's no hope,
Right.
because we didn't see that. Because of faith, we always see hope.
Correct.
And I think that that's what really, without our faith, we wouldn't have got through it, and without the prayers, you know, of so many people, of so many religions, just encompassing us and all in prayer is what really got John Paul through.
Does that include some group called the Friday Morning Breakfast Club? Or Breakfast Group?
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah, you know, that's our little group, because we try to attend morning mass, right, Derek?
Absolutely,
And
yeah.
so Fridays is kind of like a special day, because it's like, you know, a bunch of us just to get together after mass and we go have
Right.
breakfast, and they're just, you know, they're part of our prayer group, you know?
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Now, it's interesting in this book, in the format of the book, because you kind of punctuate it, you make a statement, you talk about a time period, and then as it moves, and then it kind of goes through your own, each kind of writes their own personal reflection or remembrance of a
Right.
period of time.
Right.
And then at different chapters, it goes ahead in time, and then you think, oh, you're ahead in time, now we're at this stage of his life, but it would just be a page or so, and then you're back to the
Right.
experience.
Right, yes.
And I'm just wondering, how did that come about? Was that whose idea to do it that way? Did it just naturally end up becoming that format, or?
You know what, Doug? It was my idea, I must say, and really wasn't my idea. It was from someone else, because when I was writing this, everything was suppressed in the back of my mind, and it was therapeutic writing it, actually, because I had forgotten a lot what was going on, and yes, I would think about the good stuff, and then all of a sudden I'd go back and say, this is what happened, and how did I get through all that? What was going on at this spot? So that I related to it, you know, and I wanted people to see John Paul as it was now, and then back to where he was in the hospital, recovering, you know.
Right.
Yeah, and because I remember Derek telling me, he said, you know, Annette, he said, we can't, he said, in this book, he said, because it would just be so, like, downhearting, I think, to have all that was going on at one time. And he said,
Right, all
but-
front-loaded.
It'd be
in the book. I see.
overwhelming on
Okay,
people.
yeah,
It'd be
right,
too-
okay.
And then people might think the worst of John Paul, but really, he's a happy, vibrant young teenager.
And how old is he actually now?
He's 19 years old.
Okay.
And he's such an inspiration to the youth. It's absolutely amazing. I mean, with the book, I have kids that have read the book are going absolutely shocked, and it's changing their lives. They say, you know what, I was depressed and I had this going on in my life,
Right.
but I've read this, and they say to me, thank you so much, and they hug him, and it's absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
Well, it's great. It's obviously because so many times in the culture we have today, especially the young people who are conditioned with this idea that they're supposed to be happy and successful and wonderful, and if not there's something really terribly
Right.
wrong with you in your life.
Exactly.
And to see others overcoming these real big problems
Exactly.
and issues and being
Absolutely.
and getting something out of it, and that redemptive aspect of suffering that we as
Right.
Catholics
Right.
Correct.
get, you know, and can see, and the Mother Angelica was so important in her life of demonstrating to people. Even John Paul too, showing that in his later stages, that whole idea of the suffering servant. That idea is just inspirational to people. You know, it's interesting too, because I tell you, John Paul's met more famous people than I have, that's for sure, throughout this book. But one of them, right in the beginning, it struck me. I'm thinking, you know, you quotes, you know, you get Mother Teresa, a quote from Mother Teresa in here, and some other. Martin Luther King, faith is taking the first step even when you don't see the whole staircase, you know, kind of a thing. But right in the beginning, I'm reading, you can be born into a nightmare, but God can usher you into a dream. And I'm thinking, gee, what saint said that? And I said, it's Saint Tyler Perry. And I said, wait a second, he's not a saint. Tyler Perry, isn't he a comedian or something?
Yeah, he's a famous actor. And yeah, and he...
So what's he doing in the front of this book?
Only God knows.
And I have to say, actually, you know, John Paul, there's so many things that he's not able to do. You know, he's not able to really go in with people and be, you know, one-on-one a lot because of sickness and stuff. So he's kind of lived a shelter's life, but
because you're concerned about germs and stuff and him getting ill and things like that. Right?
Exactly, and so he loves movies, and he.
Hey, that's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, exactly, and he loves movies, and he loves Tyler Perry, who does like Medea movies and things like that, and so. He started watching it, and one day he said, "Mom, I want to meet him." And so we tried, and we you know, he actually went up and watched one of his plays, and Mr. Perry, you know, was just so gracious. He took him backstage, prayed with him with the cast, and prayed for my son. And then after the play, he got up in front of the entire audience and told them about John Paul and his condition. And John Paul, when he met him, said, "You know, I need to be in one of your movies." And he said, "Okay, John Paul." And so he held true to his promise. He was in Medea's Witness Protection last year. He had a cameo role, but you know, and we still keep in touch.
Isn't it? It's always amazing. You know, you never know. You know, there are people out there who are famous and for different things and stuff, and sometimes you can run into situations and you find out, well, they're not so happy and life is tough. And other times you can find these people and they're really wonderful people.
Wonderful people.
Absolutely.
You know, you just don't know. Everybody's an individual, everybody's different. Right?
I mean, James Patterson, I mean, we were doing a book signing in Barnes & Noble, and we sat in there and we told him we were going to be there in West Palm Beach, right? And the guy comes in and everyone's shocked because the people are coming in to get the book signed. And he comes in and sits right behind the desk there and starts signing our book. And John Paul and I are looking at this. What an inspiration. I said, oh my gosh, I've never seen anything like that.
I know, it was unreal.
And the manager comes up to us and she says, "What did you do?" Because he doesn't even come sign his own books.
Really? Wow.
But he came in to sign with Derek and John Paul.
So he had read the book or just heard the story?
Well, he read the book, and that's how he gave us the quote. And then I just happened to call his assistant, said, "Hey, Derek and John Paul's doing a book signing," and he came. You know?
He was so inspired, and you know, that's how God works. Like, you know, we spoke, I mean, God works through people like that, through you, through me, through every one of us.
And knocking on the door, in a sense, you know, the fact that you're willing to, that he has the inspiration and that you're willing to carry that out and say, it's worth a shot, let's try, let's see. Because you got Tiger Woods, right, in the story. You got Jack Nicklaus. I mean, it's just interesting.
Michael Jackson.
Michael Jackson. I saw.
Absolutely.
So. But you know, and you think of all these famous people, but the one person that's really John Paul's constant is Jesus, is God. Because you know, we think of all these famous people, but the main thing is
Jesus. And that's where he wants to devote his life, to be a priest. He wants to take his next step, and that's just, I'm just like,
really?
It's like, wow, what's going on here, you know? I never expected anything, you know, I just let it happen.
I mean, is there a sense that he has his own internal generation of this? I mean, I mean, obviously you've given him a certain culture to grow up in and an attitude, but how much of this do you see as being some sort of inspiration for him personally?
It is. I mean, you know, Derek, don't you think, I mean, you take a young guy who has all this going on, who, you know, he never has questioned. He never, when he saw the scars, he's never questioned us about the scar. And for a long time, he really knew what was going on, and finally it just all came out. And for him to just really live the life and to be, he's an inspiration to us every day and to so many others.
And he respects everybody. One thing I must say about my son, and I tell you what, I am absolutely shocked because he sees Jesus in each and every, he sees God in every one of us. He doesn't discriminate. If he sees someone suffering, it hurts him.
Right.
He really loves everybody, whether it's the kids always come around him, families, friends, people that don't even know him, that always want to be close to him. Even the President of the United States, when we were with him, he opened his eyes because, you know, he had a lot of stuff going on. And then when he saw John Paul, he's like, wow, you know, he got totally involved. And there's been a lot of...
Right, and it's just, he just has that inner...
There's
almost
something
like
there,
an old
right.
soul that's just...
Right.
He's beyond his years in so many ways and so many aspects of life.
It's just an inspiration on us.
Now, going through the book, and right in the beginning, it comes out in Derek's version, and then later on you talk about the same story, and it had to do with when things weren't going so well in ICU, etc. You say, you're out of nowhere, an elderly black man in his 80s appears at the door, and you go through describing he's wearing dark pants. He said, "My son, you have a child in there." And I answered, "Yes, but it doesn't look good." With surety, he said, "Don't worry, everything is going to be fine." I thought to myself, who is this guy and why is he telling me this with such conviction? The words were barely out of his mouth when suddenly the nurse rushed to the door. "Hurry up, quick." You go running in. As I enter, the doctor is standing in the middle of the room shaking his head, not in disgust, but rather with a smile on his face. When I see the smile, I feel weightless. "I can't understand this," he said. And I say, "What happened? What did happen?"
You know, Doug, as you're reading that to me, as you're reading that back to me right now, I feel that guy inside of me right now. Right now. When he touched my knee, and let me just go back a few points. John Paul was in a critical stage, and he had less than 1% of surviving because his lungs were gone. He couldn't get breath because the heart was not giving enough oxygen to the lungs, and he's going in heart failure. And that's when they put him on a jet ventilator. So we had all this going on at the same time, and the nurse told us, "He's done. We want to just give you that." So now we've got all this, and we're in that room, and this guy comes in. And he says this to me, and I'm saying, who is this guy? And then he touches my knee. And you know what? When you just said that, I feel that same vibration right now with me. I can feel him in me, and then she goes, and he's gone after that. Who is this guy? You know, a famous person told me, that could have been an angel, that could have been Jesus, that could have been anyone very spiritual that wanted to be there at that time.
Just at the right time.
Someone was there at the right place and the right time, and this person, wherever he was or she, would always be with me, and has never left me. And I feel that right now.
Well, you say also that after it happened, you went looking for him, right? And you couldn't find him. And you asked the staff, and they said they've never seen him. The gentleman I described. Furthermore, I was told the custodians do not work in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
And you go on to say, angels wear many faces and appear in the oddest places.
Exactly. And to walk in, we ran into the ICU expecting the worst, and then the doctor standing there shaking their head, and all we saw was,
she raised her hands up
to heaven. She said, "There's only one reason
that this could have changed like this."
And it was actually so amazing that I actually wanted this person so much back to see this person,
we wanted
just
to
hold
show
him and touch him, and I couldn't.
We didn't see him.
So.
It was also interesting that you were talking about early on, and you say, after Mass one Sunday, we decided to speak to Father Joe. And we said, we wait for him in a small room behind the sanctuary. Father Joe, an upbeat, positive man, enters. We explain the news about our baby. In his heavy Irish brogue, he replies to our news, "Leave your worries at the altar. Let God help you through."
Right, exactly.
Beautiful.
That's exactly
Is that
what
something you've carried forward?
That's what we carry, and we have to remember to continuously do that. But we also, and this is when I was still pregnant, and I remember him telling us, "Leave your worries at the altar and let light shine into your everyday." And and I can think of that as light from the sun, but it's also Jesus is our ray of light. Let him always be in our day, each day.
And a lot of, it's easier said than done, We always say, but I think of a lot of families that go through the same issues every day, and I would really encourage them just to try that. It's not, hey, will it work? I don't know. But try it and see, and 90% of the time it does.
You just that's what we want to offer. If we can only offer a glimmer of hope to someone who thinks they have no hope, then that's what we want John Paul to be able to do.
Was it the doctor who looked like Billy Crystal?
Yeah.
Imagine that.
Did you really meet him and that's the first thing you said to him?
That's the type of guy I am. I see a guy, like I just told you right now, I told you I think you look like, and I said, you know, this guy looks like Billy Crystal. And he looked at me, and I think he was like, okay. Pretty funny, actually.
And so, is Derek, are you the Beatle fan, or is John Paul the Beatle? Who's the Beatle fan, or are you all Beatle fans?
We're all Beatle fans, I think, yeah. But John Paul, he loves the music, you know. John Paul loves the Beatles, he loves that music, but I think Derek was more so the Beatle fan.
Yeah, and we grew up, it was really, and this just worked out like crazy, because...
I mean, when we said John Paul George, you know, then everybody considered us, I mean, they nicknamed him Ringo.
Oh, right.
Ringo, the doctors go, "Where's Ringo?" You know, it was like,
and, you know,
I was okay with that.
But we'd always say,
no, that's not what we named it.
It's the Pope, John Paul, yeah.
Well, you actually use, talk about the CD. I found, the line from "When I Find Myself in Times of Trouble, Mother Mary comes to me, speaking words of wisdom, let it be." John Paul's voice echoed over McCartney's. And of course, some people have always thought of the Blessed Mother. Of course, also McCartney, who was raised Catholic, his mother was named Mary.
Mary.
So that's another reason why a lot of people thought.
Exactly. Yep.
Back there. So is he a fan of Manchester United, or did he just acquire, gear from everybody?
Oh no.
He's a big fan. He goes.
So how did he get? Oh, you're soccer. Okay, I'm a little slow here. Okay, I got it.
Yeah, big fan.
Now, were you a fan of Manchester United?
Yeah,
oh, okay.
Big fan. Yeah, and it was just growing up, and he just loved the side, and liked to watch them play and enjoyed anything that makes him happy. I'm happy. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
Right. There's something that's mentioned several times, the Norwood procedure. You talk about the second time and the third time. What is the Norwood procedure?
I'll let you do.
It's 3 different stages. The Norwood procedure is where the heart is functioning on the right side. They do the procedure in 3 different stages, where to see if the heart can withhold the pressure, because the blood is firstly pumped, I believe, to the middle part of the body to see if it can. That's the first stage. And in the second stage, then it's to the upper part of the body. And if it can survive that, it's great. And then the third stage is to the lower part of the body, which then is very, very emotional, because it makes sure that it can withstand everything. And if it does that, and which now it's been working for 19 years, it's helping other kids do that too. So it's better than a heart transplant, because it's hard to find a matching heart. So that's where the Norwood procedure took place, in 3 different stages, just to make sure that the heart could function and work. And so that's what, and it worked to the help of God,
Now, and you say here about willpower at the beginning of one of the chapters, and having willpower is definitely a word that applies to John Paul. He talks, once he sets his mind on something, he gets there. Now, he was working as the water boy, right? Was that for the football team then, or was that a soccer?
The Benjamin High School
I want to make sure which kind of football, because you might call football soccer, right?
Sure.
But did he actually say throw a Hail Mary?
Yes, he did.
He told the coach.
Is it close to the coach?
And the coach loved it. And he absolutely loved it.
Is that the only hope we have, is just throw a Hail Mary?
And I have to admit that coach actually, at the banquet that year, actually gave John Paul a coach's award, because he was on the sidelines and he actually told him what to do, throw a Hail Mary.
And that was unreal. It was special, actually.
In chapter 11, there's a great quote about love. Willa Cather, that says, "Where there is great love, there are always miracles." And I think it's pretty clear that you believe you got a miracle.
Absolutely.
Right? Absolutely.
Yeah. There's no doubt in our mind. We look in the face of a miracle every day.
Every day.
With John Paul. He's our gift, and we face our miracle every day.
And you know what? We have a Christmas tree in our house that we keep up every day. And people come in and say to us,
"Oh, really?" Okay.
And people come in and say, "Why do you have a Christmas?" And then I said, "You know what? Because every day is Christmas with my kids alive."
That's right.
Every day is Christmas for us. That's our gift.
Well, that's interesting too, because people would look and see your situation and say, "Well, they look like nice people and stuff, but they've had a tough time." And you have a chapter on gratitude. You quote Chesterton, "When it comes to life, the critical thing is whether you take things for granted or to take them with gratitude." How do you stay grateful, even though this sounds really good, things are going good, you've been through some tough times, you still have challenges all the time.
Every day,
I'm sure there's still a specter that you always have hanging over there. How do you keep going day to day? And what would your advice be to other people?
You know, I'm so glad you brought that up, because, you know, if I'm running in the park or I'm doing something, people stop me and say, you know what, I've read Heart of a Lion, it's changed my life. Small things like that. My kid has read it. He's been depressed and he's read it. And I say, thank you. They say, you know, we want to thank you. And you say, you know what, it's an evergreen book, because if I'm having something, I'll go back and I read some of the chapters. And that's my purpose. And I feel so excited, and I feel so blessed, and I feel so inspired by my son, because he's helped everybody. And that's where I feel.
Exactly.
Well, it's an inspiring book. Both of you are inspiring. I'm sure people in reading this book get to meet him as well. I know there's another book on the way. We'll look for that.
Thank you.
It's great to have you here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Derek. It was great.
Thank
you so much. You too. Good luck. Okay.
Thank you.
Stay in touch. Okay.
Absolutely.
Speaking here with Derek and Annette George, author of Heart of a Lion, a very, very powerful book. You should pick it up. Check us out next time here on EWTN, and don't forget it's available through the EWTN Religious Catalog. I'm Doug Keck. Thank you for joining us right here on EWTN's Bookmark.